Hey everybody, this is Josh Cook, aka Seizures Palace, and today we're going to be going through Song of Week number 24, which is a remix that I wrote for the Toronto-based band Sister Strange, and they reached out to me recently about doing a remix of one of their songs, and they kind of let me pick the song, and I was really attracted to their song, Cemetery Song. That's a lot of usage of the word song. Anyway, so it was really cool. They had like a scat sort of solo that the singer did, and the main melody was kind of cool, and I like darker vibes, and as much as this song didn't really have a dark vibe to it, I liked the lyrics and how dark they were. It's about being born in a cemetery and having a different sort of view on life, from what I can tell. If you want the full understanding what their song's about, ask them. So they're on remixmyband.com, which is my website alongside my co-founder buddy and business partner, Sean Harvey. So do feel free to check out remixmyband.com, check out Sister Strange. I'm Seizures Palace, I'm on there. You'll be able to see this remix on there soon enough. And yeah, the gigs are flowing on that site finally, which is nice to see. So feel free to check it out there, and I'm going to take you through this song. So I did make my own kick using Kick 2. I'm not going to go through exactly how I made it. Everyone's a little different. I like to normally add in a live click, like from their live section. I really like Zomboy's bass drums, and I always feel like he comes from that like metal background, right? And it just has like an authentic bass drum sound mixed with a little bit of that extra sub frequencies, the extra sub frequencies needed for clubs kind of thing, right? So I like that live feel, and I'll normally add a click and sometimes a softened hi-hat on top, which kind of comes more from Madian's bass drum sound. So that's kind of my philosophy behind how I choose the top end of the kick. The bottom end's pretty simple tuned EDM style sub. And yeah, so it ended up coming out like this. Good tail on it. And for the drums, the rest of them. So pretty fast hi-hats with a good amount of reverb on them, and then a fat snare drum. We can take a look in terms of the snare group. This is the sort of EQ that I added onto it. I didn't boost around here, which I normally would, but I found that by taking out a little bit around just above 300 hertz, that still gives the illusion that this part is boosted. I like to normally take a look around 5K for snap and 10K for sizzle. I don't really add a whole lot in the middle on my snares. Normally I try to take out stuff that's happening within the mid frequencies. Transient master happening at times, and that's just to lower the attack and sustain, probably just to subdue it a little bit later in the song. Let's find out, when that happens. So that is, it doesn't even happen, so I can actually turn that off and get rid of that. See ya, you're useless. Okay, Rise and Hit. This was used from Rise and Hit Within Contact. I couldn't tell you the exact preset. I just kind of went through a bunch, and it was kind of cheesy, kind of like movie trailer-esque, and I didn't want anything that proper. I just wanted like a classic dance riser, nothing too specific. But what I've been finding works for these overly complicated, more risers, the hits are normally pretty good overall, but the risers can get really like cinematic sounding. And I find that by putting a filter at the beginning and filtering out the high frequencies, and then kind of warping the filter, or moving the filter up, but warping the sort of sound to kind of, what's the word I'm looking for? It just kind of like opens up into the hit. I have to show you. It's really hard to put in words. So here's how it sounds. That's sort of like, it's just, it's that sound. It's so hard to explain. But I've been really liking that. I can take really complex risers, and by filtering out a lot of the highs and then kind of gradually zipping it in, you're kind of you're altering it, so it's a new riser altogether. And I find that I can get a lot more mileage out of the riser sounds within Rise and Hit by doing that. So that was summed down into audio information. I swept out, I should say like a wave file. I swept out some of the lows, like sub frequencies below about 60 hertz. That was just precautionary measure more than anything. And then yeah, I did the automated filter. So there's that. A little bit of white noise. I like using white noise as a sort of changing the channel transition sometimes. I use white noise for a lot of different things. Sometimes little sweeps, sometimes little accents on snares, or to be gated with a snare. This is kind of what I'm going for here, though. Take a listen. And it's there, and then it's here. So if I'm going for a really dramatic transition from, like, for example, I went from like I don't even know what you would call the beginning of the song. We'll call it electro or just electronic music, dance music, whatever. And then into something a little bit more swung, kind of like electro swing, or what turns into eventually like electro jazz, if that's even a thing. It's a pretty dramatic change in style. So I wanted to make sure that I had this white noise to kind of, again, cue almost like a channel change. Like you're going from one channel to a completely different channel, and that really just sort of opens up the ear to, you shock the ear a little bit, and then you kind of, you're at that point is more open to new possibilities or a staggering difference in style in this case. So that was kind of my excuse for a really bizarre transition between a couple different styles. The main thing is what happened within this remix project is I got this sort of stuff going. And that was the vocals that I had, to work with. Those are the vocals that I had to work with. And they did a scat solo later, like I mentioned, but that wasn't originally sent to me. So I wanted to get to work right away, so I started that. And then I got the scat solo thing, and I'm like, okay, maybe I'll just restart fresh and do electro swing. And I got thinking, why don't I do both in the same song? And then that was kind of how I justified going from the straight section to the swung section. Or I guess they're both swung, but you know what I'm saying, the dancey section to the swing section. So yeah, that's what's going on there. This was also recorded live off the floor, so I had to do a lot of warping with the vocals, and not to mention, there's a lot of stretching of the rhythm with that vocalist, and in a good way. But it's difficult to warp something when it's swung like that. And this person clearly, I don't know if they did jazz studies or something like that, but they're a great jazz vocalist, and they're really loose with their rhythms, but in a way that really works. But to fit it into this sort of genre, like, or just electronic music in general, I had to really sort of tame the rhythm on that. And it took a little while, and I might have even changed some of the things a little bit from how she had originally sung it. But there it is. It's warped. It's in. So I normally wouldn't take on a project for a remix project from a live band that didn't record to a click, and that was the situation here. But I took it on as a challenge, and it worked out. So just goes to show, get out of your comfort zone sometimes. There's a vocoder on the vocals as well, too, outlining the main harmony. I'm actually hearing a couple things that I'd like to change. Maybe is the carrier might have a little bit of release that I feel like I should probably get rid of, and that would probably be here. And also the side chain that I'm using there is the new compressor in Ableton. I'd probably swap it for the old one because the side chain compression is a little more subtle, so I'll do that after the video. But that's kind of the idea, and if I go a little sooner in, it sounds like this. That sort of idea. I'm also going to sweep out some of these lows on the vocoder. Not super necessary. Yeah, and that click that you're hearing on the sidechain compressor would be fixed by updating to the new one. So anyway, that's what's going on with the vocoder. You put those two together, you got something like... I'll go from here.
My philosophy, cause I was my philosophy, cause I was
chords. And more chords. Okay, so there's two things I'm doing with the chords there, outlining the same harmony as the vocoder. There's this arpeggiator, and it's filtered. And then there's the same chords. Wow, something crazy is going on outside. And I use the classic auto filter with the sidechain setting to get this sort of bubble wrap sort of feel. And it's not used the same way as Future House would use it, but that's a really common trick in Future Bass, Future House, those future genres which will one day be past genres. Do they change the name of the genre at that point? Does Future Bass at some point have to become Current Bass and then Past Bass? Just throwing that out there, something to think about. And then what's after Future Bass? I mean, you can't go past the future, can you? All right, we have this mid pad, just to kind of fill out the mids a little bit. I ended up turning this way down. It's really subtle in the mix, but it sounds like this. Really subtle, and I'm pretty sure that was FM8 or maybe Absinthe. And then I did like this. This was kind of influenced a little bit by, not Tim Burton. Danny Elfman. There's the name. Okay, so I was watching A Nightmare Before Christmas recently, and I just love his orchestration. So the orchestration I chose here was kind of a little bit influenced by that movie, but check it out. I have an accordion, vibes. Kind of reminds me of when they're playing the bone xylophone from Nightmare Before Christmas, that kind of idea. And then some odd percussion that kind of sounds like scissors. And that's all with. So we got that going on. And then finally there's, a couple things. There's a sub bass, and that's complemented with an upright bass, and that's the Cuban upright bass from the Cuba series within Contact, or the whatever you want to call it. So it sounds like this. And with sub to keep the really low end super consistent. So the upright was used through Contact, as well as this piano. And that's probably the part I'm most proud of, was doing a little like jazz solo in this and doing some rootless chords and kind of busting out some jazz chops, which I haven't really been able to do a lot in these Song of Weeks. So that was kind of fun. Kind of like more swing style piano. And then so then there's that going on, and then that is the majority of the entire song right there broken down. I wish I knew what questions you guys had off the start, because I could go into more specific detail on some of this stuff, but a lot of it was summed down as well too at one point. Like the accordion might have had some effects, and then when I freeze it and flatten it, those effects get flattened onto it, and then I'll just do like something like this. Like that's probably not all the EQing I did on the accordion. But yeah, I can show you anyway. So the accordion had a little bit of a low mid boost, the vibes a little bit of a high mid boost, and did the opposite in the low mids. And then the odd percussion, I was kind of outlining some of the sizzle of the scissors, as well as the actual contact of, I don't know if they're scissors, I'm going to call them scissors, the contact of the metal or whatever substance they're trying to emulate there. Mid pad was frozen flattened, so not seeing much there. Chords, I'm really outlining the sizzle. I use this sort of sound a lot in songs. You can see it's filtered here, and then when it opens up, and that's again using that filter trick. And then the arpeggiated chords, there's a filter on that. That's also automated, and I'm outlining somewhere around 3.5, which is where a lot of presence is. Like that's where our voice is most present, is right around that area. I'll say 2 to 4 kilohertz. And normally on an arpeggiator, I would sync it back a little bit more in the mix, but there was a little bit of room left over in the end in that area of the frequency spectrum, so I decided to fill it out, and it worked. So as long as you got a full spectrum, hopefully people are happy. I'm going to play a couple of the parts of this song just to kind of show what's going on, and then of course look in the description if you want to hear the entire song. I always post when I do these Song of Weeks, the entire song, as well as the walkthrough. And one more time, this band is Sister Strange. Check them out. I'm sure they're on lots of different social media platforms, but I feel it's something that I have to promote, which is Remix My Band, to go check them out there. And yeah, you saw it here first. Let's go from the beginning. So the vocals here are filtered, and they have a delay on them. So around 1.7 kilohertz. And then it kicks into. And then it kicks into. So what's going on with the voice there? Let's check that out. So Isotope's vocal synth is what's happening there, and I'm using the CompuVox setting. And you can do some cool stuff with this. And I'm a sucker for speak and spell style vocals. I don't know what it is that attracts me to that style. Like vocoders and speak and spell. I love that early sort of way of robotizing, we'll call it, roboticizing, I don't know what the word is, the vocals. So I'm a sucker for the nostalgia of vocoders and speak and spell sound, so I decided to use that there with Isotope's vocal synth, which I got recently. And with that said, also the mastering is done using Isotope Ozone and Insight, which I have here more just for fun. I'm still learning how to use all the different things on Insight. What I'm most looking forward to there is the ability to use LUFS, loudness units full scale, to be able to work on things like broadcasting and certain television shows, and working to the standards of like Japanese stations or American stations, and it's great for all that kind of stuff. So I'm just getting into that, and there's a lot to learn there. I'm not going to open up Isotope's Ozone because I'm afraid that it might end up freezing just because there's a lot going on here with OBS in the background, but do know that it was mastered using that, and nothing too intense, just a little bit of EQ. I've been maximizing a little bit before I put it into a limiter, which I find just helps kind of get my RMS up a little bit without squashing everything too flat or overriding your limiter or maximizer by itself. A little bit of excitement. There's an exciter on it is what I'm trying to say. And some stereo imaging to widen out the high end. Normally for the lows, I don't really do too much because I'm already pretty mono in my mix. For the low mids, I keep it pretty much flat in terms of stereo imaging, or just a little bit below flat even to kind of narrow it in a little bit. And then I'll take the high mids and pull them out just a tiny bit, and then the highs and pull them out a little bit more. I never even go like, if here's the scale for this is specific to Ozone, but if here's the scale of not widened and fully widened, I don't normally go up much more than about there. I don't even reach about halfway most of the time, but it depends on the mix. These are my mixes, so I'm already doing some stereo imaging ahead of time, but when someone sends me a mix to be mastered, if it's really narrow, I'm going to do some extra widening there. So anyway, let's check out the other sections real quick. So we left off around. And then it goes into... It goes on like that for a while. The transition back into the original section. So if we have A is the dancey stuff, B is the jazzy stuff, and then A again is the dancey stuff. The transition back, when I didn't just have the changing of the channel effect, was much more difficult. I had to experiment with it. So I took a part of the bass line, looped it, and then I did some filtering out of the old section, filtering into the new section, break it down, and then put it back into the drop again. So... And that arpeggiated synth really helped with this. And then eventually back there. DJ friendly outro, and then this as an outro. I might have strung this out a little bit too long, but I was going for kind of a dramatic finish, something unique, because there's electro jazz in this song. There's already some unique stuff going on, so I wanted to give it a unique outro as well too. So I think that that's everything that I wanted to cover. There's a lot going on in terms of automation and other back-end stuff, but I've given you guys the basics. If you have any questions, write them in the description. If you have any compositional challenges for down the line, feel free to also write that in the description. I'm about 2 songs... what am I trying to say? Basically, I have the next 2 song a weeks already worked out. So if you give me an idea to work with, I might be able to add that in the next month or so. It should be coming up pretty soon. One way or another, we're done for today. So my name is Josh Cook. Again, I go by Seizures Palace. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, share it around, tell your friends. If you have any producer buddies that might want to pick up some new tips or compositional tips, that is, whether it's mixing, mastering, or composition, send them my way in terms of letting them know about my channel. And if you have any bands that you're friends with or general performing artists, do tell them about remixmyband.com, because there's a bunch of producers there waiting to do some work. And for the price point, you can't go wrong. You get to offer a price and work out something with each individual producer. Yeah, I think that's everything I have to say. So I'll see you next week. Take it easy.